Can you control when you are in your deathbed? Are you able to control when you are going to die and when your body is going to stop functioning? What is our role in this process? He's asking you that question. Okay. Again, bringing that stark reality of how not only in the Sushupti state, in deep sleep, you are dependent on Brahman, but even in your death, at the point of death, you have no control, mate. Yeah, so you just have to leave because Sat is living. If the Supreme Being, Sanmulaha, Sada Ayatanaha, Sat Pratishtaha, if that Sat decides, I am going to leave this body, there is no other way. Everybody has to leave. Okay? If he decides to come in, everybody else comes in. Okay? Again, talking about the total dependence of the jivas on the Sat. So by giving these examples, Uddalaka has actually summarized the whole life history of human beings. Yeah, we are born, and she took the Retas example. Then we are alive, we are eating. The body, he took an example. Our eating and drinking, he took an example. Our states of consciousness, he took an example. And even at the point of death, he takes an example to illustrate the pradhanyatva of Brahman. Yeah, he talks about, look at the supreme independent being. He is controlling every aspect of your life. Okay, so this is the underlying current of what Uddalaka is talking about. As soon as he said this, yeah, yasya somya purushasya preyato vangmanasi sampadyate manah prane pranastejasi tejaha parasyam devatayam saya esha anima etadatmyam idam sarvam tat satyam sa atma tattvamasi shvetaketu. Okay. As soon as he said this, he puts this amazing verse. Saya esha anima aitadatmyam idam sarvam tat satyam sa atma tattvamasi. So I would encourage all of you to memorize this. This philosophy, by saying this, when you say this verse, you will remember the whole other things that Uddalaka has taught his son, Ashwetaketu. Yeah. So now, what does this verse actually mean? So this is what we are now entering into, that real amazing verse and the philosophical diversions that has happened in Sanatana Dharma. He has previously said how you are totally dependent on this Brahman at the point of death, and he has also given the illustration of that bird tied to the post. And then he has Saya Esha Anima, Aitadatmyam Idam Sarvam, Tat Satyam Sa Atma Tattvamasi. So to read this, we need to understand the context. So what is the context? I've just given you a tour de force of chapter 6, 6.1. Sarvan Vedan Aditya Mahamana Anuchanamani Stabda Eyaya. This fellow is standing like a pillar full of ego. So I put it in a red box. Yeah. Now, in that, what kind of dialogue happened here? Sarvan Vedan Aditya Mahamana Anuchanamani Stabda Eyaya. Shvetaketo Yennu Somya Idam Mahamana Anuchanamani Stabdo Utatam Adesham Aprakshayaha Yena Ashrutam Shrutam Bhavati Amatam Matam Avijnatam Vijnatam Bhavati. So this second he said, what is this son? You're showing so much arrogance. Shvetaketo Yennu Somya Idam Mahamana Anuchanamani Stabdo. So he saw his son being arrogant and egoistic, and he says, what are you so egoistic? Let me teach you the real constitutional position of the jiva that is inside you. And over the last 7 sections, he has told the Uddalaka, he has told Shvetaketu how in every aspect of your life, you are dependent on the Supreme Being. Okay, we need to remember this. Okay. In that context, do we all think that this Uddalaka has done all the ranting about creatorship, the total dependence, and he has said you are very egoistic and arrogant? Do you think he is going to then say, but you should not be arrogant, Shvetaketu, because you are actually God himself? Okay. Let us look at the logic of this argument. Yeah? If you say that you are very egoistic, but you know what, actually you are God yourself. So in that context, if you're going to teach your son who is very egoistic and you're going to tell him you are God himself, is the ego and arrogance of Shvetaketu going to go up, or it's going to come down. So I just want to pause for a minute and see what the views here is going to be. Who is going to come in there? I would love another view on this one. Any takers? Okay, so I will carry on if we are all quite shocked by this statement, because this is the context. And we should not forget, when we read the Upanishad, what is the Upakrama? What is the Upasamhara? Upakrama is where, how did it start? And Upakrama, how is it going? And what is the context? Without that, we should never read the Upanishad and take some ideas. This is the humble submission of many acharyas. Yeah, they have taken this rule of Veda Vyasa called Prakaranat. Prakaranat means contextual relevance. Yeah. So in this context, when the son is egoistic, will the father say, Tat Tvam Asi, you are that God, so your ego and arrogance should go? If anything, if my father told me that I am God, but I had so much ego and arrogance, my arrogance only will go exponentially high. Oh wow, I am God myself, so I will have even more of an ego. So that is problematic of actually saying Tat Tvam Asi actually means that the Jiva is the Brahman, or the Shvetaketu is Brahman himself. Yeah? That is one argument. So I'm just putting in some thoughts for you to think about and make up your own minds as to what the truth there about the story. We have spent 3 months, 4 months leading up to this point. Yeah. So how to approach this verse critically, without preconceived notions, but with rules of scriptural interpretations. And that is, again, many acharyas tell us that don't have your preconceived hypothesis or idea and see what the Upanishads is saying. See the Upanishads in its own merits. Yeah. So this is called Samanvaya. Yeah, the study and contemplation of Shastra is serious business, because our careers as soul is at stake here. Yeah, let's not forget that. And that is the reason why Veda Vyasa in the 4th Sutra said Tattu Samanvayat, and we have done this before. And even in Srimad Bhagavatam, the very first line says that that is very important. Janmadhyasya yato anvayat, which means Samanvayat. I've underlined that for you. Even Bhagavatam instructs you in the very first verse, Anvayat, do a proper critical analysis of the scripture before you understand what the truth there is. So what I'm going to make is today, for the rest of a few minutes that we have, and also the following weeks, is to take you through the journey of how this led to diverse views among various acharyas. We'll bring in some polemics here and talk about the philosophical debates and so on, so that we have an impartial view as to the richness of philosophical debate in Sanatana Dharma. We each may have our own understanding and truth about it. That is based on our own intrinsic attributes as souls. But that is not the intention here. The intention here is actually to give you an approach, various approaches, so that you arrive at the truth yourself. So I'll make some attempts. So when this is again, we have done this before, and I just want to again give you a summary. I think this we did in one of the Brahma Sutra sections. What is the epistemological algorithm? So when you have something in a scripture, how do you interpret this? Okay. So we have two things, you have to separate them into: material things, non-material things. Material things, if it is talking about masala dosa, you don't need Vedas to talk about masala dosa. You can just use your indriyas and you understand, you get the knowledge of masala dosa. So material things, knowledge about a masala dosa, perception is superior to agama. If, for example, Shvetashvatara Upanishad says, this is not masala dosa, this is idli, we can reject that statement, Shvetashvatara Upanishad, because with perception, we know that this is masala dosa. Okay, so that is called Upajivya, Upajivaka, Pramana, Prabalya. So those are there are technical terms. Let's not go there. So perception is superior to agama for material things, and this is important. The reason why I say that is Vishishtadvaita, Dvaita, Jainism, all the realistic schools of Western philosophies, they all keep perception as the most important means of knowledge for material things of the universe. Okay? The exceptions are Buddhism, Advaita, and there is another school of Western philosophy called Solipsism. They do not accept knowledge that comes from perception. Vimatam mithya drishyatvat. That is the axiom, that is the statement, say for example, from our friends from the monastic school. They will say Vimatam mithya drishyatvat jadatvat parichinnatvat. That is the equation there, that anything that is perceivable through your indriyas, anything that is jada, anything that is limited, they are all unreal or mithya. Okay? So that is the argument of Advaita, and the perceptual knowledge is problematic for other schools from that perspective. Yeah, good luck to them. By categorizing perception and the knowledge gained through perception as unreal, I'm not sure how our friends in monism are able to use their eyes and read a text like Tat Tvam Asi and say that I am Brahman, because that perceptual knowledge itself is unreal. So that is problematic, but that is their problem and that they need to resolve. But this is the state of affairs. All other schools of the Indian philosophies take perception to be superior to any agama. For non-material things such as Jivan, Brahman, Karma, Punya, Papa, things that we can't touch, see, or hear, and taste and smell, these things, the Agama is superior to perception. So the statements from Apaurishaya Agama, we have spent a lot of time talking about how the authority of the Vedas is superior, is supreme, and Agama is Vedas, primarily Apaurishaya Vedas. So the knowledge from the Apaurishya Vedas that talk about Jiva, Brahma, Karma, Punya, Papa, they become important. So that is the step one of this algorithm. The second step of this algorithm is, then once you see a statement in the Vedas, then you have to ask the question, is this the Niravakasha way? Is it a Niravakasha Shruti, or is this a Savakasha Shruti? Okay, I'll come to it a bit later. Is it Niravakasha or Shavakasha? Okay, anybody want to take this up at this point? We have done this before, just want to rekindle your memory. Can anybody remind us, what does Niravakasha mean? What does Savakasha mean? Okay. So
is it similar to Apaurishaya, and this one very similar to that? Apaurishaya and
yeah, likely Sudarshan, yeah, Pragnesh.
Nirgun and Sagun, or Niskam and Sakam.
Yeah. So it's all the Nir and Sava is where it's confusing you, I think. So Niravakasha and Savakasha. Look, we're talking about the messages of the Vedas, okay, of a statement, a line in the Upanishads, for example. So Niravakasha, Savakasha. Niravakasha means it is a statement in the Shruti for which you cannot make another meaning. Okay, you cannot have another meaning for that particular statement. There is no possibility of having another interpretation or another approach to it. So that is called Niravakasha Shruti. Savakasha Shruti means it is a Shruti that you can interpret it in various ways. Yeah, and it depends upon your own intelligence, of course, but that is what Savakasha Shruti is. Yeah, and that is the beauty of Vedas, because Vedas are very cryptic. These are very cryptic, and you have to break open. I've said this here. Chadayanti hava yenam chandamsi. I put this from Mahaitareya Upanishad that defines what Vedas are. Chadayanti. You have to break it open, squeeze it, work hard at it, and then arrive at a truth. Because when you do that, you will have various interpretations. Then you have to use your Tatparya Lingas, as they are called, and Purva Mimamsa Shastras for interpretation before you arrive at a truth. Okay, so I'll give you an example. So this famous verse in Mundaka Upanishad, Dvasuparna Sayuja Sakaya Samana Vriksham Parishashvajate Tayor Anyaha Pipalam Swadati Anashnan Anyaha Abhichakashiti. This is our famous birds, where it talks about two birds, Jivan and Brahman bird. That is a Niravakasha Shruti, because there is no way in which you can interpret it differently. That is a Niravakasha Shruti. But take the Chandogya Upanishad. Saya esha anima aitadatmam idam sarvam tat satyam sa atma tattvam asi shvetaketu has got 12 different meanings that are available. Yeah, so at least 12 different meanings. And so that becomes a Savakasha Shruti. So the rules of interpretation there is a Niravakasha Shruti is superior to Savakasha Shruti. Agama is superior to perception for non-material things. Yeah, so these are all the rules of interpretation, and we need to have, we don't need to have full scale knowledge of the nuances and niceties of these interpretations, but at least some general bird's eye view of how do we approach a Savakasha Shruti. This is a Savakasha Shruti. Nobody can have any arguments on that. Yeah. So with that in mind, let me just bring you back. So what did Uddalaka start off with? He started off with the first example. I told you there are 9 examples here. He started off with the first example. Sa yata sakuni sutrena prabaddo disham disham patitva anyatra ayatanam alabdva bandhanameva upashrayate evameva kalu somyatan mano disham disham patitva anyatra ayatanam alabdva pranameva upashrayate pranabandhanam hi Somya Mana Iti, and then all the discussion of everything that we have done now. Saya Esha Anima Aitadatmyam Idang Sarvam Tat Satyam Sa Atma Tattvam Asi. So you take this verse. It is talking about the Jiva and Brahman and their relationship. So this is talking about a non-material entities. So we can all accept that Agama is the source of knowledge for this. Next, we ask the question, is this a Niravakasha or a Savakasha Shruti? It is a Savakasha Shruti, which means there are various ways, at least 12 different ways of understanding this verse. So it is not a Niravakasha Shruti, it is a Savakasha Shruti. So that is the step 2 in the algorithm. Then what you do? Prakaranat. You see the context in which this verse actually comes from. What is the context? Saha, Yaha, Yeshaha, Anima, Yetad, Atmyam, Idam, Sarvam, Tat, Satyam, Saha, Atma, and then Tattvam Asi. So there are 12 words before this Tattvam Asi comes. So this Tattvam Asi has got a history, and it's got a background, it's got a grammar, it's got a syntax, it's got a whole lot of words behind it, and it is placed in that context. It comes in that context of interpreting this verse. What we should not be doing is just pluck this, forget about the whole context of everything that Uddalaka has said, starting from creation and the states of the bodies and the states of our life, and then just take Tattvam Asi. Oh, I am Brahman. Thou art that. Okay. Everybody flaunts this, which is most unfortunate, because you can't just pluck it out, forget about rest of the things, because it may not help you in your thesis. Just because it does not help your thesis doesn't mean you should remove other things from the equation. An impartial scientist, a medic who reviews a phase 3 randomized trial, will review the evidence critically, looking at all the variables in the equation, not just take one point. That we all do in our professional and daily lives, whatever our daily life that we do. That rationality is there in what we do in our professions and in our personal work. The same level of rationality we should bring when we interpret scriptural evidences, rather than just plucking it out, forget about the context, and then talk about a philosophy. So this is problematic for many schools of Vedanta. Except the monastic schools, other schools have problems with such an interpretation. So what we will do is, again, over the next 2 to 3 weeks, we'll explore all this about what are those challenges, what are the polemics, and I find it extremely intellectually satisfying and interesting, and I'll share my enthusiasm with you over the next 2 to 3 classes. Okay, so moving on, let us see over the next 10 minutes possibly What do these 12 words? There are 12 words right before Tat Tvam Asi. So what do they actually mean? What is Uddalaka is actually saying? Okay. So we said this bird is Jiva. This post is Brahman. Okay. I got this person here, this Pindanda, this person who is the blue circle there is the Jiva, and inside the Jiva is the Antaryaman. Okay. Just for us to remember this. So, Saha, what does Saha mean? And as I said, it is Chadayanti iti Chandamsi. You need to open it up and understand what Saha actually means. Saha means not just that person there. That is just colloquial Sanskrit. That is not what Uddalaka is talking about. Uddalaka Sanskrit is Vedic Sanskrit. Yeah, it's a language of the Vedas. It's Apaurusheya. It's unwritten. It's supremely authoritative. Will he just say that person? No. Saha there etymologically means Saratvat Saha. Okay, that which is the essence of everything. That which is the essence of everything in the universe is Saha. How is that possible? Saratvat Saha. Sara is rasa, the essence. Yeah. So go to Taittiriya Upanishad. There is a famous verse that some of you may know this. Raso vai saha. Rasam hi eva ayam labda anandi bhavati. Kohyevanyat kahapranyat yadesha akasho anando nasyat. Amazing second Brahmandavalli verse there. Raso vai saha. So the Saha means rasa, raso vai. Vai means authentic. He is the essence. That is why he is called Saha. So again, what I'm trying to say here is when you read the Upanishads, not in isolation, you should read it in the grand context of the Vedas. What does other Upanishads say about Saha means what? And you bring all that evidence and then understand what Saha means. So Saha means Saratvat, Anandi, Ananda. So Saha essentially means Ananda Swarupa. Okay. Who is Ananda Swarupa? This chap here, Brahman. Yeah. Yaha. Look at the next letter. Yaha. Who is Yaha? Yaha, etymology of Yaha again is two. Yamayati. Yamayati means he who is a controller. Niyamana. Okay. Niyamana. Yaha. They are all derivatives from that. Yamayati or Yam Yati. So let's look at Yamayati. Brihadaranyaka Upanishad. Antaryami Brahmanam. Yeah. Yah sarveshu bhuteshu tishten sarvebhyo bhutebhyo antaro yam sarvani bhutani naviduhu yasya sarvani bhutani shariram yah sarvani bhutani antaro yamayati yeshata atma antaryami amrutaha. These are famous verses, Antaryami Brahmanam of Brihadaranyaka Upanishad, which gives you 20 such statements about how this fellow who is Yamayati, who is as an Antaryaman, he is in every aspect of the universe and he controls it. That fellow is Yaha. Yamayati iti Yaha. Yam Yati. Yam means knowledge. Yeah. Yati. He gives knowledge, but he is also Jnana Swarupa. So we all know that the primary Swarupa of Supreme is Jnana Ananda Maya. That is Brahman. So he says, you know, everything in your life, you are dependent on that Brahman. Who is that Brahman? He is Saha. He is Yaha. Okay. And then he says, Yeshaha. This is interesting. So Saha means when you talk, some of you do Sanskrit classes. So Saha means somebody who is far away. Okay. Yeshaha means somebody who is close to you. Okay. So Saha can also mean that. Saha can also mean Saratvat. So if you take Saha, somebody out there, and then take Eshaha, somebody close to you, that makes more relevance. So Eshaha comes from A, Ishaha. Ishaha means Ishtaha, the one who is about which you are most fond of. So again, this Mundaka Upanishad says, Dvasuparna, Sayuja, Sakaya. Sakaya means what? They are most affectionate friends. So Eshaha in that sense, Ishtaha. Okay. So he says, you know, that fellow who is everywhere in Brahmanda, he is Eshaha. He is actually inside you as your Antaryamin. He is Eshaha. Saha there, Eshaha here, close to you. So we all know the Narayana Sukta of Yajurveda. Antar Bahishta Tat Sarvam Vyapya Narayana Hastitaha. Yeah. This chap who's there is also here. Antar is inside, Bahishta is outside. Tat Sarvam, Tataha, pervaded, Sarvam, everywhere. Vyapyam. Who is that? Narayana's. That is Narayana's greatness. Yeah, Stitihi. Narayana Stitihi. So that Antaha is called Aham. That outside Bahishta is called Ahaha. That and all we have done it before. So similarly, Saha means that fellow who is outside. Yeshaha means he is inside. So he is inside you, Shvetaketu, your Antaryamin. He is inside you, but he is still very, very subtle. Anima. Okay, and then that's the word he uses, anima. Saya esha anima. So that supreme being who is your Antaryamin, he is very, very subtle. Also, although he is inside you, you're not able to see him. That is why he's called anima. Anima means what? Anutvena meya. He's very, very subtle. So Kato Upanishad, as you know, talks about Anor Aniyan, Mahato Mahiyan. Anor Aniyan. Yeah, so he is inside the subatomic. He is inside you. You yourself are subatomic. Inside you, he is there. He is so subtle. Yeah. And also, anima, you can also split into ma and anayati. Ma means jnanam. So anayati means he who gives you the knowledge to know that he is anima. Yeah. So although he is our antaryamin, we still don't see him, right? We still don't know him. Most of us run our life without even realizing that he's inside us. Okay, that is why we are in this suffering situation. So even for us to know that he's inside us, he has to give us his knowledge. He has to provide the knowledge. That means we need his grace. So that is what is anima there means. Saya esha anima. Etad atmyam idam sarvam. Okay, so that is important. So here is it etad. Now say eshaha means close to you. Etad means very close to you. Okay, etad means your antaryamin. Yeah, so your antaryamin is what? Atmyam idam sarvam. Atmyam. Atma has got so many meanings. One meaning of Atma is your governor, your master, your Swami. Literally, Atma means your Swami. Talks about pradhanyatva. Okay, so he reminds Etad, this person who is very close to you, idam sarvam, he is atmyam. Idam sarvam there means this kshara, the whole kshara akshara existence. So we know from chapter 15, you have aksharaha, then you have kutastha aksharaha, then you have ksharas. Ksharas are all the beings from Chaturmukha Brahma to us. Kutastha is Lakshmi. Akshara is the supreme Brahman. That is the overwhelming message of chapter 15, right? 16 to 20 verse. So that all this idam sarvam, that is Kutastha, Akshara and Akshara, he is the Antaryamin and controls. So, etad atmyam idam sarvam. Then he describes all the things I've told you so far in this chapter. He's basically summarizing all this. So, saya esha anima, etad atmyam idam sarvam. These are all summary of all the examples that he has given. Then he says, tat satyam. Yeah. So Tat Satyam is the next point that he gives. What does Tat Satyam mean? Tat means Tataha. Tataha means that which has pervaded everywhere. And we also know that Tat is the name of Krishna himself. And he said that Om Tat Sat Iti Nirdeshaha. The Tat is the name of Krishna himself. Tat also means Tataha, that which has pervaded everywhere. We have done Gayatri where Tat means Tat Savitur Varenyam Bhargo Devasya Dhimahi Dhiyo Yonaha Prachodayat. Ta and Tat. So Tat is also talking about the Gayatri. So this Tat is this supreme being. Satyam. Look at the definition of Brahman. Om Brahma Vidapnoti Param Tadesha Abhyukta Satyam Jnanam Anantam Brahma. Defines this the supreme being as Satyam Jnanam Anantam Brahma. And that exactly is what Uddalaka says here. Tat Satyam. Recently, we in one forum we were talking about it. What is Tat? What does Satya means? Sat, Ti, and Yam. Sat means nirdusha, nirdushta, no doshas. Ti means jnana. Ya means ananda. He is pure jnananandamaya. And there are also other meanings of Satyam. Yeah. So he's saying Saya esha anima aitadatnyam idam sarvam tat satyam. So in the previous part of the slide, I've said all these beings along with Brahmanda is dependent on this supreme Akshara. He, as you know, Sadeva Somya Idam Agra Asi, Tad Aikshata, Bahusyam, and then the whole universe he brings. Therefore, Tataha Satyam. This created world of the supreme being is real. It is not some illusion that we are told. This is absolutely fundamentally real. The reality of the universe is the same reality of the jivas and Brahman. Why? Look at Shvetashvatara Upanishad. Kavir Manishihi Paribuhu Swayambhuhu Yata Tatyato Artan Vedadat Shashvatibhyaha Samabhyaha. Yata Tatyato Artan is what the Shvetashvatara Upanishad says. This Kavihi, this most knowledgeable, Manishihi, Paribuhu, Swayambhuhu, he creates Yata Tatyato Artan, he creates the real universe. Shvetashvatara Upanishad. I sometimes wonder where some of our friends of other Vedantic schools have forgotten about Shvetashvatara Upanishad, this verse from Shvetashvatara Upanishad. I also wonder about how they can forget the very first verse of Srimad Bhagavatam. Janmadhyasya yato anvayad itaratashtarteshva vignaha swarat tena brahma hrudayadi kavaye muhyanti yat surayaha tejo vari mrudam yata vinimayo yatra trisargo mrusha damna svena sada nirasta kuhakam satyam param dhimahi. Nirasta kuhakam. What does the nirasta kuhakam means? This creation is not a magic. It is not some illusion done by the Supreme. Nirasta kuhakam is the wording from Srimad Bhagavatam. Again, I wonder why our friends have forgotten all these great verses from scriptures and are saying this world is an illusion and mithya. Good luck to them. But from where I see it, the language of this particular Upanishad, Tat Satyam, the language of Shvetashvatara Upanishad, Srimad Bhagavatam, and all the things that Uddalaka has said. You know, over 3 months we have read about Uddalaka, about he is giving the whole sequence of creation. He's talking about what happens at every step and so on. If this is a damn illusion, why bother talking about this in this Upanishad or anywhere in the Vedas? Yeah, you don't say this is a great art, but the art is false. Yeah, it just is not adequate scholarship. Yeah, so it's everywhere. In the language of the Uddalaka, he's saying this is Tat Satyam, Tataha Satyam. Why? Atmyam, Idam, Etad Atmyam, Idam Sarvam. Therefore, it is Satyam. Saha, Sadayati there. That Saha there means Sadayati. Again, I want to impress, there are these words that are placed. They do not have the same meaning every time you talk about it. They have different meanings. Yeah? Sadayati means he who gives you all that you ask for. Okay? Saha, then comes our word, Atma Tat Tvam Asi. Okay, so I hope you understand. I was a little bit more articulate because I'm very, very passionate about how this 12 words are placed before Tat Tvam Asi and how we have forgotten the spirit, the essence of what Uddalaka is saying, but just pluck this Tat Tvam Asi and flaunt a philosophy. That is most unfortunate Vedanta from my perspective. And if you look at the spirit of what Uddalaka is saying, he is worshipping the Supreme. He's saying, you're so big, we are nothing, we are so dependent. The problem there is, after saying all this, he has said, Atma Tattvam Asi. So how do you handle this? Okay, this is what our rishis do all the time. And if you look at these various Upanishads, the rishis would put some cryptic sentences so that, you know, what is Upanishad, for example? Yeah, so I'm going to break there for a minute. So who is going to tell me about what Upanishad means? We have done it before. Tell me, can you give us some answer on what Upanishad means, please? What is the literal meaning of Upanishads? So there are so many meanings. One meaning is Upahvara. Upahvara means secret knowledge. Yeah, it is not available on the street for any Tom, Dick, and Harry. You don't talk about Upanishads in a party of alcoholics. This is serious business. Yeah, and it is secret business, secret knowledge. And that is how our rishis put these words, and they they put cryptic sentences and want us to go and do the hard work, want us to do the hard work and understand what is actually there. So let's see how this goes for the next 5 minutes. So let's say Atma Tattvamasi. Look at that word, Atma, Saha Atma Tattvamasi. If you just pluck it out, then it means you know that Atma is you. Okay. If you forget the other 12 words, which you should not if you are a proper student of Vedanta. Number two, so look at Atma and Tattvamasi. So some of you who are doing Sanskrit lessons, you have Sandhi, right? Suvarna Dirgha Sandhi, Visasarga Sandhi, Vyanjana Sandhi, and so on. So let's take Swarna Sandhi. So when you have a long vowel and a short vowel, so one word ends with a long vowel, and the second word starts with a short vowel. When you do a Sandhi, that becomes a Swarna Sandhi. Swarna Dirgha Sandhi, as it's called. So take grammar, simple grammar. You don't have to go far from here. Simple grammar. If you, for example, say Atma plus Atatvamasi, if you take Swarna Dirgha Sandhi, it is Atma Tattvamasi. Okay. Or you can just keep it as it is, Atma Tattvamasi. So there are two ways of actually looking at this sentence, if you like, or the set of words. So that is the first point. Nobody is telling us, now we should not be bowed down to the view that we should interpret only as Atma Tattvamasi. We can also interpret as Atma Atattvamasi. Okay, so that is again Savakasha Shruti. So this is what Savakasha means, of ability to interpret the sentence. We can interpret in various ways. Okay, so let us move on. So he said Saha Atma Tattvamasi, and I've spread it out to Atattvamasi Tattvamasi. Okay. Here there is another Atma. Previously it was Aitadatmyam Idam Sarvam. Here he says Saha Atma. So there that Atma has got so many meanings. I don't think we have time today. Maybe we'll take it up next week. Apnoti iti Atma, Adatte iti Atma, Atti iti Atma, Atatatvad iti Atma. Yeah. So Atma, the inner controller, my Swami. So there are so many meanings of Atma there. You need to put that. This Saha, we read as Sadayati iti Sahaha. This Atma there could be any of this. Atatatvat iti Atma is one meaning there. Okay. If you take, so it's again talking about the attributes of the Supreme. And then if you take this angle here, Atma, Saha Atma Atatvamasi. I just want to deal with this first. Many of you may not be familiar with this because you would have just heard people flaunting Tattvamasi as the ultimate philosophy. Here is another view. Atma Atatvamasi. Why? Our Shvetaketu has Stabdayeyaya Sarvan Aditya Mahamana Anuchanamani Stabdayeyaya. So our father Uddalaka has given him instructions, and he concludes, this is concluding portions of chapter 6, and he says, shed your ego, Shvetaketu, because you are not him. All the things I've told you so far, did you create the universe? Did you create this body? Do you process the food? Do you process the water? When you go to sleep, do you decide what sleep you get? Do you know how dependent on your deep sleep? Do you know that you cannot even decide when you want to die? And actually, when you die, the Sat has to leave, you have to leave. There are so many dependents in your life. Your whole life is full of dependence. How on earth can you get ego and arrogance? Shed your ego, Shvetaketu, because you are not him. You did not create any of this. When none of these you have created, how can you have the ego? So that is a very simple way of understanding the context in which Uddalaka is giving Sa Atma Atatvamasi. Or, again, the beauty of Uddalaka is, you can also read it as Atma Tat Tvam Asi. Okay. Yeah, so what does that mean? That Atma Tat Tvam Asi is a metaphor. The previous one is vritti. So when you have a word, the word gives a meaning. The meaning can be two ways. It can either be mukhya vritti or lakshana vritti. So we have done this all before. Maybe next class we'll handle this again about how does metaphors come into being. So this Atma Tattvamasi is a metaphor, like Simmo Devadattaha. Devadattaha is a lion. Okay, if somebody says Shushrut is a lion, that doesn't mean Shushrut has got a tail and he's going to hunt in Nottingham. No, it means he's a very strong person of great leadership qualities. That is what it means. It talks about metaphors. Similarly, Atma, Tat Tvam Asi is a metaphor, not just for other schools, but also for monastic schools. It is a metaphor. Yeah. So we will deal with that, how the Advaita looks at the metaphor, how other schools look at the metaphors in Sanskrit language in the next class, because people forget this. Not many people are even aware that it is a metaphor even in the monastic school, but they just pluck and say this, Tat Tvam Asi, much to the disappointment of serious schools of Vedanta. They have to understand that this is a metaphor, and metaphor has got rules. How do you do metaphors? How do you do interpretations? Yeah, there is the Jaha Lakshana, Ajaha Lakshana, Jahat Ajaha Lakshana, the various Lakshanas in Sanskrit language, like other languages, including English. Yeah, how do you use, what are the rules of Lakshanas? Yeah, so all those things we need to put in before we understand. So that is metaphors. The other ways of metaphors of what is called Abeda Shrutis, the Shrutis that seem to indicate Aikya, like Tat Tvam Asi, they seem to indicate maybe there is, nobody denies that they don't indicate, they don't suggest this. Suggestion is different, but the Tatparya is different. Yeah. When the suggestions are there, there are other ways of looking at it as well. For example, there is a work of Acharya called Anuvyakyana, where he will say, Swatantrecha Vishishtatve Sthana Matya Aikyayoropi Sadrishyecha Aikyava Samyak Savakasha Yateshtataha. So he'll give rules. So for example, he'll give examples. We are all one in this matter, means we all have the same opinion. We are stuck as one in the sinking ship, means we are in the same place. We are all one as Indians during Independence Day, means that we have not become one, but we are all synchronized in our thought process. We all look at a picture and we say it is a lion, as I said about our Shushrut, but it is only a resemblance, or it gives you an attribute. Yeah. Yeah. So that is one Lakshana. But when we see a lion picture in a frame, we don't say that is a lion. It is just something that resembles a lion that is there in the forest. So those are all the metaphors that we use in language. So we need to take those and understand the spirit of what Tat Tvam Asi is. So again, I want you to introduce this concept that Tat Tvam Asi is a metaphor. It is not a truth. Just because there is a line called Tat Tvam Asi doesn't it becomes a truth. It needs metaphors and how to interpret this. For example, Jiva is Agnyata, cha Alpashaktitvam, Dukkitvam, Swalpakartata. There is no denial of that. Brahman is what? Sarvajnata adi gunaha. Sarvajna, Sarvashakta, no dukkha, yeah, Sarvakarta. So that is all Brahman. So if you want to bring that equation, that Tat, that Brahman, that Tvam, Jiva are the same, then you need to handle these issues. Vedas talk about Brahman as Sarvajna and the Jiva is Alpajna. How are you going to remove all these qualities and merge them together and then say they are the same? So that is what is the polemics in Vedanta, which is important, because I think it's probably there is no access to this literature, but also we do not make an attempt to actually go and explore this literature, because we've just assumed just because somebody says Tat Tvam Asi that it is the final truth. It absolutely is not. Look at the grammars of Tat, Saptasu Pratama. For those of you who are doing Sanskrit lessons, Tat can have 7 different ways of looking at it. Yeah, Saptasu Pratama, we will deal with that. Okay, look at 9 different examples. Okay, now throughout his teaching, Uddalaka has only given examples to illustrate distinct concepts. He is not ranting about the same thing. Yeah, there's 9 different examples illustrate 12 different concepts of relationship between Jiva and Brahma. If it is the same thing, Tat Tvam Asi, you are that, it becomes repetition, not reiteration of a concept. So Punarukti is repetition, Avruti is reiteration. Punarukti is a dosha, it is a flaw. Yeah, the Tat, as I said, has got so many meanings. Tat Adina, Tat Sadrishya, Tasmin, Tasmat, Tasmai, Tasya, Tat Prati. So you need to take all these things and understand what the Tat Tvam Asi actually means in that line where it's got 12 other words that celebrates the greatness of Supreme. And that is the reason why in chapter 2, Gita, Krishna actually says beautiful 41 and 42 verses. So I want to finish off today to invite one of us in the audience, in our group, to actually to recite these two verses, which are very important, because that is very, very important for us to apply in our practical sessions on the Upanishads, because that is what Krishna is instructing. So who would want to take this up?
Madhu?
41 and 42.
Hello,
Is it
Madhu?
Nita?
Yeah.
Go for it. Nita, go for it. Go for it.
व्यवसायात्मिका बुद्धिः एकेह कुरु नन्दन बहुशाखाह्यनन्ताक्ष बुद्धयो व्यवसायिनां यामिमां पुष्पितां वाचं प्रवदन्त्यविपश्चितः वेदवादरताः पार्थ नान्यदस्तीति वादिनः.
Thank you, Neetaji. It's very beautifully recited. So, Vyavasayatmika Buddhihi. Yeah, Vyavasayatmika Buddhihi means exercise your intelligence. Buddhi, Vyavasaya, like how a farmer toils his land, similarly, toil your intellect. Toil your mind and brain. Work hard on what the scriptures actually tell us to find the truth. Yeah, dive deep into that ocean to get those jewels, not just skimming the surface, is the resounding message of the Gita. And what I think we should do as sincere and serious students of Vedanta is to take Krishna's advice and do that vyavasaya of these verses, these complicated verses of Upanishads. And hopefully over the next 2 or 3 sessions, we'll look at this each example. There are 8 further examples to follow, and each one is so beautiful, and we will have a lot of discussions on that as we go along. So on that note, I'm going to conclude today's session. Next week we have Pavanji from Charlotte, who is going to summarize part A of Journey of Souls. So if you remember, this was about 1.5 years ago. We did a 6 or 7 or 8 sessions on Journey of Souls, and these are basic concepts of Vedanta and stuff. So Pavan is going to do part A of that. So I hope to see us all there next Sunday. So on that note, I will conclude today's session, and Krishna Pranamastu. Happy to take any questions.
Can I have a go?
Yeah, they will go for it.
So Niravakash
Savakasha Niravakasha.
Agama, yeah. Are the
HinduKnowledgeAcademy.com will celebrate Vedic culture and present its philosophies to the modern Hindu in an accessible format. Our ancient heritage is our greatest strength. Through preservation and dissemination, together let us spread positivity in the world. Thank you for listening, and welcome to Hindu Knowledge Academy.